Richard the Lionheart was born on September 8, 1157, in Oxford, England. He was the third son of King Henry II and Queen Eleanor of Aquitaine. Richard's parents had a tumultuous relationship, and his father had several mistresses, leading to family conflict and political turmoil. As a result, Richard and his siblings grew up in a highly charged and competitive environment. In 1189, Richard succeeded his father as King of England after a bitter struggle with his brothers over the succession. Richard's brother, Prince John, initially opposed Richard's claim to the throne, but eventually submitted to his authority. Richard was crowned king on September 3, 1189, at Westminster Abbey. He spent much of his life outside England, either in France or on crusades, and it is doubtful if he even spoke English. Richard was renowned for his bravery and military prowess, earning the nickname Lionheart for his courage on the battlefield. He was an experienced warrior who had fought in several conflicts before becoming king. Richard was also known for his physical strength and endurance, which allowed him to lead his troops into battle and endure long campaigns in harsh conditions. In 1190, Richard set out on the Third Crusade to retake Jerusalem from the Muslims, along with his allies King Philip II of France and Holy Roman Emperor Frederick I. The Crusade was a long and arduous campaign, marked by a number of battles and skirmishes with the Muslim forces. Richard's leadership and military skills were instrumental in securing a number of victories for the Christian armies. During the Crusade, Richard led his army in the capture of the important city of Acre in 1191. The city had been under Muslim control for several years and was a key strategic target for the Christian armies. Richard's leadership and tactical skills were instrumental in securing the city, which became a major base of operations for the Christian forces in the region. During the Crusade, Richard famously sparred with Saladin, the Muslim leader, in a number of battles and skirmishes. Despite their enmity, Richard and Saladin developed a deep respect for each other's military prowess and chivalry. After negotiating a truce with Saladin, Richard returned to England in 1192. After returning to England, Richard faced a number of challenges from his enemies and rebellious barons. He spent much of his time and resources fighting to consolidate his power and maintain control over his kingdom. Richard was a skilled politician and negotiator, but his efforts to maintain control over his realm were often hampered by his enemies. In 1194, Richard was captured and held for ransom by the Holy Roman Emperor, Henry VI. Richard's captors demanded a huge sum of money in exchange for his release. A king's ransom was not cheap, and this forced Richard's subjects to raise a vast amount of money to secure his freedom. Richard was eventually released, but the incident left him deeply embittered and suspicious of his enemies. After his release from captivity, Richard returned to England in triumph, where he consolidated his power and launched a number of successful military campaigns against his enemies. Richard was a popular and respected king, and his military victories helped to cement his reputation as a brave and effective leader. He was known for his patronage of the arts and his support of troubadours and poets, such as Bertrand de Born and Blondel de Nesle. He was a lover of music and literature, and his court was a center of artistic and cultural activity. Richard's relationship with his younger brother John was fraught with tension and conflict, particularly after John tried to usurp Richard's throne while he was away on crusade. Richard forgave John and restored him to his position as heir to the throne, but their relationship remained strained throughout Richard's reign. In addition to his military campaigns in the Holy Land and in England, Richard also waged war against the French king, Philip II, who was his longtime rival. Richard was initially successful in his campaigns, winning a number of important battles and capturing several key cities. However, his successes were ultimately undermined by his own tactical errors and the growing power of his enemies. Richard died on April 6, 1199, in the arms of his mother, after being wounded by a crossbow shot in the shoulder a few weeks earlier. He was wounded by a boy while besieging the castle at Charlus in France. The archer's name was Bertram, and Richard pardoned him and gave him 100 shillings and set him free. However, after Richard died, Bertram was flayed alive and then hanged. Richard's heart was buried in Rouen, Normandy, his entrails in Charlus, where he died, and the rest of his body was buried along with his father at Anjou. He was succeeded by his younger brother, John, who went on to become one of England's most controversial kings. Despite his short reign, Richard left a lasting legacy as a brave and charismatic leader, who embodied the ideals of chivalry and the knightly code. Richard's reputation as a hero and warrior was cemented by his exploits on crusade and in his various military campaigns. He was admired for his courage, his physical prowess, and his chivalrous demeanor. Richard's life and legend have inspired countless works of literature, art, and film. making him one of the most celebrated figures in English history. Richard had a close and complex relationship with his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine. Eleanor was a powerful and influential figure in her own right, and she played a key role in Richard's upbringing and education. Richard was deeply attached to his mother, and he consulted with her regularly throughout his reign. Richard was a brilliant military strategist, who was known for his boldness and audacity on the battlefield. He favored aggressive tactics and was not afraid to take risks to achieve his objectives. Richard was also a skilled negotiator, who was able to secure important alliances and treaties with his enemies. Richard was known for his love of women and his many romantic dalliances. He was also rumored to have had several male lovers, although this has been a subject of much debate among historians. Richard was married to Berengaria of Navarre in 1191, but had no legitimate children, although he did have several illegitimate offspring. Richard's relationship with his father, Henry II, was often fraught with conflict and tension. Richard chafed under his father's authority and rebelled against him on several occasions. Richard was a devout Christian, who saw himself as a defender of the faith. He was deeply committed to the Crusade and to the idea of retaking Jerusalem from the Muslims. Richard was also a patron of the church and supported a number of religious orders and institutions. During his reign, he oversaw the growth of the English common law, which helped to establish a more uniform system of justice throughout the country. Richard also worked to expand royal power, consolidating the authority of the monarchy and establishing the king as the ultimate arbiter of justice and law in the land. One of Richard's most enduring legacies was the emergence of the knightly class. Richard himself was the quintessential knight, embodying the ideals of chivalry and honor that characterized this class of warriors. Under Richard's patronage, the knightly class grew in power and influence, becoming an important social and political force in medieval England. In addition to these developments, Richard's reign also saw the growth of the English economy and the emergence of new trade routes and markets. Richard was a shrewd businessman and he worked to promote commerce and trade, particularly with his native Aquitaine. Despite his many accomplishments, Richard's reign was also marked by controversy and conflict. His love of war and his impetuous nature often got him into trouble, and his confrontations with the French king, Philip II, and his own brother, John, ultimately undermined his military and political achievements. Nevertheless, Richard's legacy as a brave and charismatic leader, who embodied the ideals of chivalry and the knightly code, has endured to this day. His life and legend have inspired countless works of literature, art, and film, making him one of the most celebrated figures in English history.